This is the FM Gold channel of All India Radio. In the program Spotlight, now we bring you a discussion on GAGANYAAN. The participants are Biman Basu, science expert, and Dr. Nimish Kapoor, journalist.
GAGANYAAN is an Indian crewed orbital spacecraft intended to be the formative spacecraft of the Indian human space flight program. The spacecraft is being designed to carry 3 people, and a planned upgraded version will be equipped with docking capability. In its maiden crewed mission, Indian Space Research Organization's largely autonomous 3.7 tons capsule will orbit the Earth at 400 kilometers altitude for up to the 7 days with a 2 or 3 person crew on board. The crewed vehicle is planned to be launched on ISRO's GSLV Mark III in December 2021. On January 22, 2020, ISRO announced Vyom Mitra, a female robot who will accompany other astronauts in the mission. She can detect and give out warnings if environmental changes within the cabin gets uncomfortable to astronauts and change the air condition. She can also take up postures suited for launch and task and take commands. Prime Minister Narendra Modi on Sunday said that the GAGANYAAN mission will be a historic achievement in the field of science and technology for India in the 21st century and a milestone for New India. Basuji, first of all, tell us about the role of GAGANYAAN. What direction will it give to ISRO and the country's space research program?
The country's space research program is quite old now, more than 50 years, and it will be the first time that India will make an effort to send human beings into space. Because there is a large difference between sending a satellite into orbit and sending humans into space. Because the latter, when you send a human being into space, you need to do many things which you don't require to launch a satellite, like life support system, waste disposal system, and so many other things, communication for instance. So all these things will be done in case of GAGANYAAN. Now, as you said, GAGANYAAN actually is the first effort of ISRO to send humans to space. And for this, they have already geared up themselves, and a large number of activities have already been completed in preparation for the first manned mission to space. For instance, ISRO has already tested out a re-entry technology. That is, when you send a human being into space, the capsule in which they go, it has to come back to Earth. And while coming back to Earth, it faces a very difficult situation because as it enters the atmosphere, the temperature becomes very high, more than 1600 degrees, which can damage the capsule and also affect the occupants inside. But ISRO has already tested specially made tides to protect the capsule from heating up so that the inside temperature remains within 25 degrees Celsius. They've also done the pad aborts test. See, when a rocket is launched with astronauts, the astronauts actually sit on the top of the rocket, and in case of any emergency, that is if anything goes wrong, the crew had to be taken to safety without any harm. So this is an exercise which ISRO has successfully done, and it has carried out this experiment in July 2018, and they have safely recovered the capsule from the top of the rocket and safely put it down in sea. So all these experiments have already been done. They've also developed a space suit for astronauts because space suit is very important for space travel because it protects the astronauts from the extreme cold temperature of space, the vacuum of space, and so many other adverse situations or environmental factors. So ISRO has already created one spacesuit and they are working on 2 more so that if a crew of 3 is sent in GAGANYAAN, then all the 3 will be wearing their spacesuit. The spacesuit is specially made with provision of a oxygen cylinder which can support the astronaut for 60 minutes. So these are developments which ISRO has already achieved and they are going ahead, and as per the statement of the chairman of ISRO, K. Sivan, he says everything is on time and he expects that the GAGANYAAN project will take off as scheduled.
In his first Mann Ki Baat address of the year, Prime Minister said about GAGANYAAN, the country has taken another step towards this goal. In 2022, we will be celebrating 75 years of independence, and on that occasion, we have to fulfill the pledge to take an Indian into space through the GAGANYAAN mission. GAGANYAAN is a very ambitious project, Basuji, and it is a mega space mission till. Apart from space scientists, which other kind of experts and foreign collaborators or laboratories have contributed to GAGANYAAN's preparation?
For sending human beings into space, apart from the space technology, that is the capsule and all these things, you need to train the astronauts. And training an astronaut is a very difficult part in the sense that when a human being goes into space, he has to face situations which he never faces on Earth. For instance, when the rocket takes off from the launch pad, the G forces, that is the gravity forces that the astronauts experience, can be more than 5 or 6 times the gravity forces that we experience on Earth. So it's a very large force, and the astronauts have to be trained to withstand that and tolerate that. On the other hand, the moment the rocket reaches space, in the sense when it releases the space capsule, it suddenly becomes zero gravity. That is as if there is no gravity. So this switchover from 5 or 6G to 0G is a very difficult experience for human beings, and astronauts have to be trained specially for this. Now, for the Gaganyaan mission, 4 Air Force pilots have already been sent to Russia for training, where they'll undergo training in these matters, because high G, they do it normally with centrifuge machines. Centrifuge can create very high G.
What kind of training will be given?
Basically, one is this tolerance of high G and low G, in the sense microgravity. And there are 2 ways of doing it, because centrifuge machines, these are huge machines which rotate and in which the astronaut sits. And when it rotates, it creates very high G forces. So their body functions monitored, and then it is found whether they can tolerate it or not. So this is one of the exercises or one of the training methods that is used to train astronauts for space. And 0G, when we float in water, we feel much less gravity because the buoyant force of water takes over. And astronauts are trained to work under this when immersed in water to get some experience working with 0G, because zero gravity cannot be created on Earth. So these trainings are necessary, and the 4 Air Force pilots who have gone to Russia, they will be getting this kind of training for 11 months, after which they will return to India and undergo further training in India itself.
The experience of zero gravity in Gaganyaan creates a thrill. Have any astronauts shared this experience in any TV show you have listened or any kind of book you have read about this experience, zero gravity?
Well, actually, zero gravity is a very erroneous concept, in the sense gravity remains, because the space capsule in which the astronauts are there, it is going round the Earth because of gravity. So it is experiencing the force of gravity. But any object in orbit is actually constantly falling body. And as long as a body falls, it doesn't experience any weight. This can be tested on Earth also. Right. Because if you leave a spring balance, it immediately goes to zero. So this can be tested. So when astronauts are in a space capsule in orbit around Earth, they don't experience the force of gravity. So it is a very strange feeling, because you can't feel which is up, which is down. And because our brain actually determines up and down because of gravity. And in absence of any clue as to which way is up and down, there is a lot of confusion in the minds of the astronauts. So they have to be trained to work in that atmosphere. Another problem is, you see, on Earth, because gravity keeps us down, we can operate any machine by turning a screw or a wrench. But in zero gravity, you cannot do it, because your body is not supported by gravity as it is done on Earth. So it's very difficult to operate simple machines and carry out simple operations. So they have to be trained specifically to do that.
Our listeners would like to know about the scientific and technical aspects of Gaganyaan. What kind of fuel will be used in it? What kind of exploration will it do in space? And how much time duration will it have?
You have said that Gaganyaan is a mission in which it is planned to send 3 astronauts, Indian astronauts, for 7 days into Earth orbit at a height of 400 kilometers or so. The basic purpose of Gaganyaan is first to send human beings into space from Indian soil using Indian rocket. That will be a great achievement from India, because only a few countries have done it till now, and India will become the 4th country. Another important thing is that astronauts in space can carry out lots of experiments under zero gravity which are not possible to do on Earth's gravity. And several things like chemical processes and crystallization, so many other scientific experiments which perform much better in zero gravity than on the gravity of Earth. So these experiments are not possible to be done on Earth. So once they go to space, they will be able to carry out. In fact, during their stay in space, the crew of Gaganyaan will basically focus on carrying out scientific experiments under zero gravity. And of course, gain a lot of experience.
Can you explain any experiment, for example, to be conducted in Gaganyaan in zero gravity?
No, for instance, crystallization. When you crystallize on Earth, gravity affects the formation of crystals. the shape of crystals and the quality of the crystals. And there are some chemical reactions where, because of the difference in density of the reactants, the reaction sometimes doesn't go equally well. But in zero gravity, since they will mix uniformly because there is no difference in density, so the reaction will be much better. In fact, those astronauts who have already been in space, they have carried out this kind of experiments, and they have found out that many chemical reactions, they perform much better when carried out in zero gravity.
And what about Gaganyaan's fuel, or how it will get energy for its movement?
Once it is launched into space at an altitude of 400 kilometers, it won't need any fuel because it will go by inertia. Any orbiting object, spacecraft for instance, once it is launched into orbit, it goes by gravity because Earth's gravity drives it.
And it is controlled by the computers at ISRO headquarters.
Well, from the control center, but it will have fuel, onboard fuel, because it is to be brought down. Then its speed had to be reduced. So the rockets will be fired in the wrong direction, in the other direction, so that its speed reduces and it starts coming down and then lands on Earth. So all these things are there.
Lands on some ocean or
Arabian Sea actually, because they have planned it for Arabian Sea.
And efforts are being made to keep everything fine in Gaganyaan. But what steps will be taken to deal with it in times of any emergency?
No, emergency there are not many. As I told you that ISRO has already tried out certain things like pad abort exercise and all these things. Because once it is launched and the spacecraft is in orbit, there is no danger that way. Because nothing can happen because it is under gravity and it is almost moving in a vacuum. That is, there is no problem. But while returning, as I told you, that re-entry into the atmosphere is a very dangerous point in the whole mission, for which ISRO is prepared because they have already tested capsule re-entry using special kind of tides which they have designed to protect the astronauts from the high temperature that is reached when the capsule enters the atmosphere. So I don't think there is any other risk that way.
And it will be interesting to know what kind of food will astronauts eat in Gaganyaan and how to handle their daily tasks.
Of course, for space missions, food has to be packed in a different way because the way we eat food on Earth cannot be repeated there because in absence of gravity, everything that you leave will be simply drifting away and then it can cause a lot of problems. So normally, food is in kind of paste or something which is used in tubes just to be squeezed for eating. And this kind of, it is only a question of packaging, how you package the food so that it doesn't create any problem in the zero gravity situation of the space capsule. So that is done normally in all space missions.
Will our policies on space programs change after Gaganyaan? What will be the agenda towards space research after Gaganyaan?
No, ISRO has already plans to set up a small space station. Because, in the Gaganyaan mission, they are planning to keep the astronauts in space for up to 7 days. But 7 days is not a very long time for doing certain experiments which may need a longer period. So ISRO has already planned to set up a small space station where astronauts can live for maybe few days or weeks. So that will be the next step after Gaganyaan, because once Gaganyaan succeeds, then they will have more confidence to go in for setting up a space station. And if that happens, then it will be a new feather in the cap of ISRO.
Thank you, Basuji, for interesting information on Gaganyaan.
Thank you.
You were listening to a discussion on Gaganyaan. The participants were Biman Basu, science expert, and Dr. Nimish Kapoor, journalist. This program was produced and presented by the News Services Division of All India Radio. This program is also available on our website, newsonair.com. You can also follow us on the News on AIR app for updates. You may email your opinion about this program at airnsdtalks@gmail.com.